Okay, and like I said, privileged exec mode is privilege level 15. You'll get a little bit of a visual clue because rather than seeing that greater than sign, you will see a pound sign after the host name. This does not necessarily mean that you're in privileged exec mode. So the pound sign will show up for any privilege level that is not 1 or 0. 1 or 0 will show you the greater than sign. 2 through 15 will show you the pound sign. Again, when you're on the CLI, just issue the show privileged command to verify what privilege level you are in. But technically, privileged exec mode is level 15, so you could see a pound sign for level 7 and you're not really in privileged exec mode. But so this is what privileged exec mode looks like from the CLI. As you can see, we have the pound sign, and I just went ad nauseum through the caveat on that. But to verify, just issue the show privilege command, and it says current privilege level is 15, which means we are in privileged exec mode. Now, if we issue the question mark, which will bring up the Cisco IOS help, you could see here, even with these brief list of commands that I had to truncate to fit on the slide, there are quite a few more commands than there were in user exec mode. But most importantly here, from privileged exec mode, you can get into the next mode that we'll look at, which is the configuration mode. And you do that by issuing the configuration terminal command. A lot of times you're going to see this as CONF space T, which is just abbreviation, conf T. So you might hear people say, can you get into conf T? It's configuration terminal or configuration mode. The other thing that you can do from here is that you can reload the router. So you want to limit the people that can get into privileged exec mode, and you can do that through a variety of methods. But for just out of the box simple Cisco devices, the best way to do that is to configure that enable password that I've mentioned. And there's a different lesson specifically on passwords. You'll want to go through that. I don't want to get too far off the topic that we actually are covering today, but I do want to stress that as a security feature, you want to limit the monkeys that could get into this mode, because from here they can do anything. They can configure the router, screw that up, they can reload it, they can go in and change your privileges, just all kinds of stuff. So make sure that this is locked down as much as you can. Alright, global configuration mode. And this is where the true danger starts, because even in privileged exec mode, for the most part, you're still doing the show commands, the information gathering and troubleshooting. When you actually want to make changes, you have to issue that configuration terminal command, which will get you into this CLI mode, which is global configuration mode. And global configuration mode, obviously from its name, the configurations that you make will be applied to the device globally. That statement probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you right now. We'll see a sub mode, which is interface configuration mode, and that might bring it back a little bit better. So the prompt for global configuration mode consists of the host name, of course, of the device, followed by the word config within parentheses and then the pound sign. So it's really easy to tell when you're in configuration mode. Plus it will also tell you welcome to configuration mode. But the big thing here is this: nobody should be in configuration mode that doesn't know what the hell they're doing, because you are changing the running configuration mode. And I'm not going to get into the difference between running and startup here. That's a different lesson. But on Cisco devices, when you type in a command in configuration mode and you hit enter, it takes effect immediately. You do not want to be in global configuration mode on a production device and not know what the fuck you're doing, because you can screw stuff up, you can lose your job. Seriously, you do not want to be messing around in global config mode, or any of the config modes actually. So that's another reason why you want to limit the access to privileged exec mode, because you have to be in privileged exec mode to get into global configuration mode. And this is what it's going to look like from the CLI. Here we're in privileged exec mode. We issue configure terminal, and it tells you you're entering, well, this says enter configuration commands, 1 per line. And with Control Z, we'll take a look at this in a few slides here. But you can see the difference. Here you've got the pound prompt. Here you have the host name, and then you've got config within parentheses and then the pound prompt. So if we issue the question mark, which invokes the Cisco IOS help, it's a completely different set of commands, because these are not verification, troubleshooting, information collecting commands. These are commands that change how the router works. Keep that in mind. This can be a career limiting decision to go around in a production device and mess around in configuration mode. You've been warned. And there's a buttload of configuration commands. There are far more configuration commands than there are exec mode commands. Okay, and here we can see we're in configuration mode, we're in global configuration mode. One of the commands that you can issue is a hostname command, and what that does is that basically renames your router. So we see the host name in all of our prompts. In this case, it's R1, that's the name of my device. So I type hostname, space, and then the name that I want to name my router. Now here I hit enter, and what I'm showing you here is that as soon as you hit enter, there's no apply, there's no get out of configuration mode, and then, write or accept changes or any of this garbage. As soon as you hit the enter key, the configuration command that you have entered will take effect immediately. So you can see here our host name, as soon as I hit enter, changed from R1 to applied ASAP. Keep that in mind. So just another warning that this is messing with the running configuration, and you can screw stuff up if you don't know what you're doing. Hell, you could screw stuff up even if you do know what you're doing. Once you're in configuration mode, there are a ton of configuration sub-modes. I'm not going to review all of them. I am going to touch on one that you will use quite often out in the field, and that is interface configuration mode. There's a lot of features that you will enable on a per interface basis, and the commands that are available per interface are going to change based on what type of interface, serial interface versus an Ethernet interface versus a loopback interface, blah blah blah. We're not going to do a deep dive into interface configuration mode or the things that you configure from that mode, but I do want to show you how a configuration sub mode looks. So in this case, we go from Privileged EXEC mode, issue our configure terminal. We get into global configuration mode, and we can tell that because of our prompt. Got the hostname R1 and then config within parentheses and then our pound sign. So to get into interface configuration mode, we specify the interface that we want to configure. In this case, it's interface serial 0/0. We hit enter, and now we can see a change in our prompt. We still have our hostname, we still have parentheses, we still have config, but we have a hyphen and then IF. And IF in this case stands for interface. And then we have our close paren and then the pound sign. The effect of this too is that it kind of tabs over your configuration. So it's kind of a nice visual reminder that you're in a sub interface mode. But keep a lookout for this on test. Cisco is fond of asking you a question saying, what's the command that is used to accomplish X? And you'll see the same command listed twice and be like, well, why do they have it twice? What's the difference? Take a look for this. If it's a command that is not supposed to be available in interface mode, then that's a twist with the answer. Not only do you need to know the correct command structure, but you also need to know the configuration mode that it's available in. But I digress. Anyways, what I want to show you here was that you can configure under the serial interface the IP address. No shutdown. Basically, that brings the interface up. And again, this is stressing that when you enter a command, the change takes place immediately. So right after I hit enter, after this command, that IP address is assigned to that interface. When I hit enter after no shutdown, that's going to bring up the link, and we can see here that we get messages to that effect. And then to get out of the interface configuration mode, we issue exit. We'll talk about this a whole lot more in the next couple slides. So you made your configurations and you want to get out of configuration mode and back into exec mode. There are a multitude of ways to do this. You can issue the exit keyword. So at a command prompt, if you type exit, what that will do is it will take you back one step in that hierarchy of modes. So in this case, we are in global configuration mode, then we issue interface 0/0, which puts us into interface configuration mode. Again, we could tell that by the IF here. So if I type exit, it's not going to take me out to privileged exec mode. It's going to actually just take me back to the next highest level in that configuration mode hierarchical tree, which is global configuration mode. If I issue exit from global configuration mode, then I do get put back into my privileged exec mode. So the exit command is really nice if you're configuring something under an interface and you want to go back into global configuration mode and continue making changes. But sometimes you go in, you make your change under your sub interface mode or in global configuration mode, and you just want to get back to privileged exec mode. What you can do then is just issue the end command. You can see here, same situation. We were in global configuration mode. We went into interface configuration mode. Rather than type exit twice, we just type the word end. End will kick you out from whatever sub configuration mode you are in back into privileged exec mode.